Hagar works with survivors of modern-day slavery and severe abuse and helps to empower them in their road to recovery after often quite traumatic events. We also work in strengthening systems and the capacity of governments, communities, other organisations. And that can be through awareness raising campaigns or through delivering training. And we especially like to focus on what we call trauma-informed care. We're part of quite a large global network, but for Hagar Australia, we are only 6 staff members. Hagar Australia's philosophy in our constitution mandates us to ensure that we're taking into account the needs, the interests and the rights of primary stakeholders, of the people that we work for. Women and children, especially girls. It's crucial that we have strong policies and procedures and ensure that that's inbuilt to all of our work. Recently, over the last almost 2 years, using the code as a really great tool, we've focused quite heavily on trying to understand how our program officers are engaging with primary stakeholders to create a new project management guidelines. It starts from our partnership agreements. We have it quite explicitly stated in there that we expect and both parties commit to making sure that primary stakeholders are empowered and their voices are heard. And then we have a new project proposal template, which has several prompts throughout that template to try and gather information that perhaps we might miss on paper otherwise. We ask program officers to also outline how they plan on engaging primary stakeholders throughout the entire project cycle. We did an appraisal with Vietnam and through that appraisal process, we recognised that they hadn't really explicitly explained about how they had involved primary stakeholders in the design process of this project. So through our appraisal meetings, we were able to flesh out why that was happening, and it was really valuable for us to understand that the way that Vietnamese society was set up in this particular region and with these particular villages was that Hagar had to really forge strong relationships with people on the ground who had been working for quite a long time with primary stakeholders, and it was through that process they were able to extract some of the viewpoints of primary stakeholders. So that was really useful for us to understand that for each context it's going to look really different. It acts as a prompt for us to work with program officers to understand and flesh out what are some of those barriers and how can we work to involve primary stakeholders a bit better. In our program office in Kabul, Afghanistan, our team was looking at how we could roll out the country's very first foster care system. And as you can imagine, that comes with a whole array of challenges in any country, but particularly in a country that's still experiencing conflict. So the project team had to work really closely with religious clergies, with academics, influential members of the community to try and understand where the concept of foster care may or may not fit into the Quran. And that was crucial to actually map out whether that project was viable or not. They got fabulous results. They were able to find a story in the Quran to which a person took in orphans, and then that provided the base kind of understanding of how they would frame that project with other stakeholders, including government. I think an excellent example of Hagar's work in empowering children was seen through our legal and protection team in Cambodia. The legal and protection team, in partnership with UNICEF, developed a resource toolkit that included animation video so that children could watch it and understand the setup of the courtroom, who they might see, what to expect on the day, and also an activity book which allowed them to understand what's going to happen to them on the day, who they can ask for help if they need. And with that came a set of guidelines and training for judicial officials, including judges, about how to work with children who have suffered from trauma, and often immense trauma, how to work with them when they are coming through the court system. Each client that comes to Hagar is assigned a case manager, and that case manager is basically core to all of our services. They work collaboratively with clients to develop what we call an individual care plan. So it means that clients are empowered to actually direct the services that they're receiving and have input into what type of services they would like to actually engage with. One of my most favourite experiences with Hagar, which I think absolutely speaks to how we try to empower our primary stakeholders to achieve what they would like to achieve, is the story of Sophia. So Sophia was sold into slavery at a very young age. When she was around 12 years old, she stole a bike and just rode and rode until dusk, when someone saw her and thought it was quite odd for a child of that age to be out by themselves. She was referred to the commune chief, who then referred her to Hagar. And I think one of the largest highlights was that Sophia expressed to Hagar she wanted to become a public advocate. So she hopped on a plane for the very first time in her life and gave evidence before the parliamentary inquiry into establishing a modern-day slavery act. I think that's an immensely brave thing to do, not only being a voice in Cambodia, but also flying internationally to influence policy from within Australia. When we're talking about trafficking, forced marriage, slavery, domestic and sexual violence, it's very gendered. It impacts women and girls the most. In each of our partnership agreements with program officers, we explicitly state that both parties commit to empowering women and girls and working towards achieving gender equality and equity. Each year, we get program officers to fill out what we call a partner profile. It's essentially a due diligence and capacity assessment tool. And we ask partner officers to provide a copy of their policy on gender equality and equity. When we move throughout the project cycle, we ask them to explain to us whether or not they have considered or consulted women and girls or people that have been marginalised because of their gender identity, and also getting them to conduct a really strong context analysis about different ways that women and girls in particular are impacted differently. Hagar Australia has a specific policy on how we will work to empower the inclusion of people with disabilities. We use that to guide us as an overarching document on how we work to implement that on the ground, and that's where those different touch points within the project management cycle come into play to ensure what we've stated as our larger statement is actually happening on the ground.